Hello and welcome to this Synched Stories video where once more we will continue redrawing Tintin, and we are in the Castafiore Emerald on page 33, and we are still doing our A2 panel, that is the second panel on the first row on page 33. So here on my in my work shop, or in my on my desk here, I have two monitors, and the one screen that you see as a viewer is my right screen, my horizontal screen. But on the left I have another screen which you can't see, where I have the original panel. I have scanned in the panel from the printed comic book album, the French original version in color, and so I have that on my left monitor. And whenever we are working here on this panel, trying to recreate it, I always check everything on my left monitor. So a good thing for you would be if you have either a printed comic book album handy, or even better, the best thing would be if you also could scan it and to have it on your monitor. So even if you only have one monitor, you could perhaps have the original panel on the left side of your monitor, and then the YouTube video running on in the middle and on the right, so you can sort of see things in more detail as we are inking now. So this video will be an inking video, and so we will be inking as much as time allows. I'm not sure exactly how long this will take, so I'm not going to predict anything. I'm sort of in the previous videos I thought we would be able to cover more material than I actually were, so I'm a little hesitant to say that okay, now we're going to ink everything in the panel in just one session. So we'll see how long we come, but what is certain is that I'm going to start with the balloon and the balloon tail, and then we're going on to Professor Calculus as our first sort of that's the plan at least. And then we go on with Tintin, and then we go on with the hand. But in this video, for certain we will do the balloon, and for certain we will come a little bit into Professor Calculus, if not everything, and then maybe something else as well. So we'll see. But I think the good thing would be if we could get Professor Calculus also done, but it all depends on time. So now, before we start, I'll just take a quick word here on my own project here that I'm working on. In parallel with these videos here, I'm doing this 987 degrees centigrade album, which is a science fiction action thriller, and this is part of the series of books that's called Unlimited Danger. So Unlimited Danger is the sort of the whole umbrella name, so to speak, and then 987 degrees centigrade is book 1 in that series. And on the back cover of this comic book this printed comic book is a list of all the 8 books of season 1 of Unlimited Danger, so you can get a sense of the kind of adventure, the kind of thriller drama that is going on here. And this is of course in full color, and it's 40 pages, and it's going to be very exciting. Alright, so that's a short announcement, and then we'll continue with the inking. So, as you can see here, my initial plan for doing this panel, for recreating this panel, was to sort of leave everything as it is in terms of what is black. So my original plan was to do the panel frame and the main balloon just as this is here. But I've changed my mind, since I'm doing this more like elaborately than I thought at first. So I have decided to let the balloon itself be included in my inking. So since this is black now, you would think that this is inked. But what I did in my previous video, I'm not sure exactly if this was episode or part 1 or part 2 or something like that. I only used straight lines in Photoshop, keeping shift down and doing a like a solid straight line here, without actually drawing it. And this explains, as we can see here, if I go into, let's say, 400%, pressing H now for the hand, and this explains why both the panel frame or the panel border and the balloon border are equally sort of perfectly straight. I drew this by hand, the corner, but everything else is not. It's by courtesy of Photoshop's shift function. So what I decided after looking at the original work by Hergé, it's clearly visible that in the original, the panel frame is perfectly straight. There seems to be no doubt about it. At least this panel and the neighboring panel, they are really straight. So these are inked with a ruler, not just penciled by a ruler, but they are inked by a ruler. So thus, therefore, we will let the panel frame be as they are. Of course, we can actually, the frame here, we can actually make them nicer here, but if they are to be perfect, since we actually are doing a duplicate the original panel frame, let's just do that before we go on. Let's just take the corners of the panel frame and also make it nice. Okay, they look nice. the next corner here. Also looks quite perfect. Actually, it looks a little so I'm fixing that as well. Oops. Not that. I wanted this one. And more to the as the original. And this one looks not resembling the original panel. So we'll fix that up. I'm now using 50% on my brush, and I'm in white color. To sort of get it approximately right. Okay, I think that would work. And then I'm now going to look at the I'm now going to do the balloon, but the balloon it's this one here, yes, balloon. But now what we will do is we will take it down to 25%. So we will use that as if it were blue with the rest. And then we will and then I will create a new layer on top of that and actually ink on that. So keeping Alt down and dragging up. And releasing. But now I'm going to undo that action by Control Z, and because a better, well, it depends on if you have to. I was just going to demonstrate an alternative. If you have many layers, like I do here, and you have to scroll in the layers palette, then it might be better if you have to go back then down and sort of unselect things. Let's say that we have a situation where we have a selected white layer at the very bottom, and then we are viewing it also, and that our goal is to copy this white one by dragging and then unview it to hide it. If that is our sort of future plan, then it makes sense to duplicate it quickly just there, unhide it immediately there before you do anything else, and then we drag it up and auto scroll up, and then we release it up here. So we don't have to go back and unview it or hide it. So we don't have to do that scrolling. And then back again, so to speak. So, okay, so now we have a white layer that we can paint on, and let's just well, let's use that and multiply on that one, and we have and maybe we should make that let's do like this. Let's make that 100% again, as it should be, and we hide it, and then we make that one. We can just let's just select everything. Take Control U for controlling the U, and hopefully we can yeah, right. So then what we have to do is naturally we must put this at 100% so we can see the colors. So okay, so I have this, so I want this to be blue, and I'm selecting all, and I'm selecting Control U, or I'm pressing Control U, and now I can colorize, hopefully more saturation, and we will go to blue if we want blue. Where is it? Is it there? Blue. And we can have this a little different, but still maybe even a little lighter, like that. So now we don't even have to use the opacity. We simply do it in the lightness of the color here. So okay, good. So now we choose the right, say, balloon inked. Okay, so let's start. So then the question is what kind of magnification we want. We want, let's say we want 400%. I think that would be a suitable value. And so when we look at this now here, we can see it's a little wavy, but I also see that, which is quite striking actually, I haven't seen this before, that even the panel frame itself, even though it's not wavy, it has different thicknesses, different weights in the horizontal and vertical directions. And it seems from this from this scan I have here, that there is something going on with the height or the thickness of the panel frame, but I think that there is something also to be said for maybe the scanning wasn't the resolution was, so maybe it is a residue of that as well. I'm not sure. But it doesn't happen in the panel to the left, and it doesn't happen in the panel to the right. So I think we can safely assume that even if it were the fact that there would be, if the scan was made in like a, not perfectly horizontally or perfectly vertically in the scanner or something along those lines, then all lines should be all horizontal lines should be equally thick. But that's not the case. They don't look the same. So, which is why I am saying now that in this panel, the upper border of the panel, the upper frame of the panel, is a little bit thicker than the other lines. Exactly why that is so, I won't speculate. But I think, just in general, I think maybe we should do some frame. Okay, let's do that. Let's just make the panel frame. Let's just copy one. It's still, I mean, the idea is still that it is done by a ruler, but it may have been that Hergé was, or one of his assistants were holding their ink pens slightly differently when they did this line. So, but I'm now adding a layer above, and I'm increasing the thickness 1 pixel here to simulate what's happening, and that should be the extent of. And then we'll actually create a new layer here, or a new folder, and we'll say frame here. So and then we'll just merge them in a new layer here, frame. Top border thicker. Okay, that's it. And then multiply so we can see all the other layers. Okay, so now go back to the balloon then. And we are going back to 400%. Now with my pen here on the Wacom Intuos small, I have only an A5 size tablet here. Okay, inked, and we are going back to black, and we are inking at least we can start inking at 50% and see how that feels. If it's too little, then we can, let's make this 75 here instead. I haven't made my shortcut for 75%. I should have, but I haven't so far done it, so I have to go up there. But if we're satisfied with 75%, then that goes, because the thing is that we want to, what we want to achieve is to have a suitable transition between the black that is in the middle of the line and the the sort of the border to the white, what is bordering. So if it, we don't want, I mean, it should look like it was inked on paper, and but it shouldn't be too hard, because you could just say we want 100%, and then you'll get a very very hard, like side of like just completely black and white. But we don't want that, because that doesn't look like on the scan. We want it to have a little natural look to it. Alright, so let's go back to 100% to see what it. So it's a little wavy, and I think it's perhaps we're working perhaps at too small. So let's do 300 instead. I think that's better. I'm adjusting my and the reason, of course, we're doing this is because Hergé himself was having this done by hand, so we are also doing that. And now we also would need to, maybe we should mark out also. I think that's a good idea, actually, because we are now working with so big objects that they cover the whole. So let's do that like that, and I'm pressing H for the hand, and let's have to measure here, so down to 200%. I'm doing that in the original here. I'm even having to change my window here to get it all inside. I can't even know it. I have a standing up mirror. I have a portrait, so I'm looking at the original in 100% only. So okay, I'll go down here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set some guidelines. So I'm just copying this layer here, guides, and I'm going solo on the guides just so we can erase it. And why was this 50% there? Okay, so guides. Okay, and now we are. So now I made a mistake. I forgot I was in the solo mode. So the thing is that if you go to solo mode, you cannot start messing around with other layers, because if you do, then you sort of automatically it automatically takes you out of solo mode, and then you can't revert back to seeing all the layers that you had viewed again, so to speak. So I made that mistake. So now I have to reinstate all the layers that I had before. But luckily they weren't so many, and luckily we are only interested in the panel and the balloon, the blue balloon. It was actually half violet or something, but alright, so we see approximately where we are, and what I should be doing now is I should be viewing here on the left in my original panel. I should be noticing where there is some waviness, because this is, once again, this is an exercise where we are trying to recreate. We're not trying to make a new version. We want to learn something here, both how Hergé has done the original, but also we want to learn how to find methods for copying by sight, how to measure proportions, how to measure distances, how to or not to measure them with a tool, but measuring them with our eyes, how to get a feel for it, and how to identify what's happening. So I'm going to let's do like this. On the guide, I'm going to identify, let's say I want a color here. Let's say I want 50% gray there, and I want this. I'm now going to divide here, and okay, now I see. Okay, so we have middle of the panel there, we have the middle of the middle there, we have the middle of the middle or middle of the right one there. Not perfect, but, and then we have the middle of that one there, and then we have the middle of that one there, the middle of that one, and then the middle of that one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, right? So this is 12.5% here and 12.5% here. Makes 25, and 25 plus 25 is 50, and then we have 100% along there. Okay, so when I look at my original artwork now, I see that there should be let's do it from the middle. Let's start on the middle here. I'm identifying the middle on the original here with just my pointer, and so there should be a little bump there on the so how should we do that? Where should we indicate that? Should we maybe we should just paint it on the directly with the gray, maybe. Yeah, maybe that's not such a bad idea. Okay, there's a little bump there. And then we have another slight bump next to it, approximately here. And then over here we go down a little bit. So it's little, we go down a little bit. And we can see this more clearly by following the okay, now I know how I'm going to do this. Okay, good. So if okay, that's a good, okay, so now I am right. So what I'm doing on my left here now to sort of, I want to be going up to at least 200% when I'm viewing this, because I'm going to look at the distance between the panel frame and the balloon frame as a guide to the waviness, because I know that the panel frame itself is straight. So if there is a larger distance between the panel frame and the balloon frame, then I know that the balloon frame must dip. And if there is a smaller distance than usual between the panel frame and the balloon frame, then I know there must be a peak. So what I'm doing now is I'm going up in 200% on the original panel window I have open now, and but then if I go up to 200%, I can't see the whole panel. So what I'm doing is I'm now moving the window size. I'm adjusting the window size to make it exactly half the panel width. Because if I can get half the panel width, then at the very right I have the middle of the panel. So I'm playing around now with adjusting the panel width, so when I scroll using that I'm clicking on the scroll area to the right of the this symbol, this darker symbol that you can grab one symbol in the scroll activation area. You can grab one symbol and drag it to the left or to the right and like that. That you can do, but that sort of moves everything in terms of like pixels. You can sort of, but if you want to scroll horizontally, going a whole screen to the right or going a whole screen to the left, then you click on the area, so the big area in between. So if you want to go to the right, you click on the right hand side there. So that's what I'm doing now, trying to find a good size here that is workable, because then we can take half the panel in one go and then continue to the next. Okay, I'm honing in on this now so we can, but it's really a matter of pixels to see. Okay, I see. Maybe if we can use a hand here. Okay, I have to. That I must do. I must use the hand to fine adjust. This is actually my first time I'm doing this kind of thing, so, but I think it's important to get techniques for doing this kind of work. So both I and you are learning something new. That's the ultimate. Okay, now I've done it. Now I can scroll the whole balloon. Actually, I can scroll the whole panel now. I have divided it exactly in half. And it's interesting because when I have done that, right, I have to make it a little bigger though. I have to actually see the panel frame also, and not just. Okay, here we go. That looks good. Right, so when we see this, when we see this, it will be much easier now to do a good inking. So now we have the, now I can increase the size here also on my right hand side in the actual and we are now following, and now it will be easier for me also to visualize where these points are, since my whole window looks like this now, or this. So I see although I do not have these markers here, I only did this on this one because I still want to see on the original. I don't want to destroy the original or make marks on the original. I mean, that's part of the exercise. But now it's easier to see where 25% of this is. So half is here, and although this one to the very right is half of the whole stuff, but this now becomes the new 50% in when we have splitted everything in two. Okay. So one interesting thing is that if we judge by the now I adjusted it wrong here. Okay, good. We're back. Okay. So what I see here when I'm now going to ink it is that this distance here, that overall I see here, overall the distance is practically identical with the original. So I made a very good first estimation of where it all sort of fits, how it should look like. Except here, it's not perfectly straight, so it should go up here a little. So what I did here is not entirely true, because there should be, this is only part of the picture, so to speak. So I'm going to go back to the black and white. I'm doing D, to pressing the D key to restore black as a foreground color and white as a background color. And then I'm doing B for the brush, and then actually I'm going to erase here this, what I did almost. I'm going to almost erase it, and I'm going to do my Xing here back to the black, and I'm working now at 75% because I think that's a reasonable value. And then we should go up here a little. So it should start a little more up here. And once again, I don't say that I would have done this. I wouldn't have. I mean, to ink a balloon is not as simple as it may be simpler if it's as straight as this than a curved one, but still to be able to produce a straight looking line by freehand, even if you have a pencil below. I mean, if you're working on a light box or a light table, even then, if you do it by hand, you will be amazed to see how squiggly it could be sometimes if you're losing your. I'm quick to say here also now that the inking I'm doing here, so-called inking I'm doing here, has nothing to do with the inking one does when working on paper, right? So you couldn't ink like this. I mean, you could ink like this, but it wouldn't be looking any good because you can't correct it like you can correct it. I mean, you could take some whitener or something, or some opaque gouache or something. You could do that, but basically you have to move your pen all the time and not lift it every or not lift it every millimeter. Okay, so basically what I did was that I'm not really well. Okay, so let's go back to the white here and make this a little, because I think it basically it looks a little thick, and this corner should also be more roundish. Okay, so this is thick, and but it still should be further up this point there. So I guess it has to be something like that then. Something like that. And then this angle here isn't actually quite like, it's not a 90-degree angle here. It's more like 120 or something in that. And it shouldn't go as far down as that. It should be a little more. Okay, that's better. Alright, so then we're basically, I mean, there's so much to be, but I think if when I look at this now, around here somewhere should be like a dip in the highest value in terms of the width of the white, or the height of the white, and then it should go up a little bit there. And it should be reasonably straight. And there's also something happening here. So it should go up a little bit here. A little bit there. Actually, this here should happen a little before here. And then it should come a little earlier. Well, maybe this angle here should be happening also a little more smooth. Okay. Maybe we should do this left here also while we're at it, because we do have the whole height here. So maybe we can do the lower part here as well. I'm just going to take a small break now, and I'll be back in just a bit. Alright, so let's continue here now with the inking, and we're basically up here, and we're also noting that the distance I made this original panel border here is pretty good, but it becomes a little closer to the panel frame down here, it seems. Or am I? It's also a little closer here. Okay, let's just try to... Do we have black on? No. Xing our way here to... So I'm doing this in smaller increments. Without any shift down, or without any stabilizers, or without any tools. So, but then of course we have our wonderful white we can use. But now let's just see. I'm now sketching the outline on this side of on the inner side of the balloon frame, because it goes in here somewhat. But I wonder if we but this is perhaps the hardest exercise of all, because the distances are so big, and there's hardly any check marks along the way to sort of identify the when things are squiggly or not squiggly. So maybe this whole thing with inking it manually, maybe we shouldn't have. I'm not sure if it's like a sane or if this is sane or not, but maybe we shouldn't give this as much weight as we have had. So this, now at this distance here, we should have a line weight that is they should be pretty much equal now, the panel frame and down here there's more ink, I think. There's more ink on two places here. It's somewhere along here. There's more ink to the right. And the ink actually goes in, unless it's a artifact of the scanning, but I don't think so. It looks like it's in the original. There's a little more ink there. Slightly more. There, and then there's slightly more just above it also. Somewhere along here. Should shave that off as well. Not, it's very, something like that. And then it's basically straight apart from this, where it's going in here a little. Going to the left, a little bump there. It's a mini bump. I don't know what it's called. It's a long bump. I mean, it's not like a. It has some extension. Even more so, even more extension than that. It's like a bell curve, but it's not the usual 95% interval, but it's more like you push it down and then it becomes very flat. Alright, so maybe we shouldn't overdo this. Maybe actually we should just say that this is perhaps not even inked by Hergé himself, so maybe we shouldn't have wasted so much time on it. We don't know, or I don't know at least. Maybe there's someone in the audience that inked it, or knows who inked it. In that case, you can leave a comment below, and then we'll learn something about the process at Hergé's studios. And one interesting thing also is that there seems to be, I mean, many albums that Hergé were doing originated very early. I mean, we're not talking 60s, we're not talking 50s, we are talking 40s and earlier. So many of those works were reworked, both one or two and perhaps even three times. I'm not sure about three times, but at least two times. So you have originally one appearance in some journals, in some magazine somewhere, or in some newspaper, and then you have some compilation book coming out some years later, because the publication in the magazine or newspaper was like just a strip, or at the very most a whole page, or perhaps 2 pages. I think that was maybe even. I've seen some, I'm not sure exactly if they translated 2 pages in the real sort of printed version, but at least we're talking about a part of a comic book, a small part of a comic book, and then they were collected in and printed in a real comic book. But then that print and that sort of they were the parts, or maybe even the whole book, was redesigned and redrawn, and so in the case of some early ones, they were first published in the magazine or in the newspaper, and then they were collected into a printed comic book album. But that printed comic book album was in black and white, and then they made a color version of it, and then maybe they even redrew something of it, and then they published that. But then so there are many. So it may be like in the earlier work, when Hergé didn't have his studios, then I would say that it's one could be fairly certain that everything in the panel was made by Hergé. But in the later works, they changed that. So Hergé didn't do everything. In fact, he only, in the most part, like in this album, I mean, we're talking here in the beginning of the 60s. I mean, the first version of this was published in 1961. So in 1961, in the Journal de Tintin, and they had even there was one version in for the French market, and then there was one version for the Belgian market. So 2 editions of Journal de Tintin, and in 1961 and 1962, then they published and of course, Journal de Tintin was a weekly comic book magazine, which is important because, and what happened was that they every week they published one page of Tintin, and that page appeared on the last page of the magazine. So I think it had 48 pages, and on page 48, outside, on the back cover, that is, there was the one color page of Tintin. So what I was coming to was that this Journal de Tintin, of course, had all the whole story, the 62 pages of whole side panels, and so that's all and well, but sometimes they changed the content, and so even if the edition was published originally, so to speak, in 1961 and 1962, even then they sometimes decided to modify certain things, small things or big. I don't have all these, but I can see from I saw something similar in. Okay, so I couldn't really say that for sure because I only verified that with Tintin in Tibet, because I saw some pages from Journal de Tintin that were changed in between the printed version, in the new modern printed version, and the original version that ran in Journal de Tintin, and that was, I think, 58 or 59 or something. They originally were published, and then when they came out as a standalone comic book, then some of the panels were changed. But the idea is simply that there are many versions, and we cannot. And in the later versions, some of the artwork is actually done by other artists, but everything is, of course, directed by Hergé. But I mean, the whole point of Studios Hergé was that comics should that his Tintin should be produced more efficiently, it's like a production facility, some company with they have this assembly line, and so that's the sort of idea, that so that Hergé could devote his time to doing that which he was most critical, and that is, he always drew his own characters. and as what I understand, he also always inked his own characters. At least that's how I understood it. If anyone else has any other information, then that would be helpful. But that's what my understanding of, having read what Hergé himself has written in his anniversary description of the writing the how to make the Tintin comics. Okay. And what's important also that even then, if we know that Hergé always drew his own characters, he sometimes made exceptions, and this is also according to his own statement that in the case of, he gives some example of like generals that have a lot of details on their costumes or on their suits, that in that case, when there are like many medals or whatever they have on the, so many gold medals or at that time, when it's very elaborate kind of clothes or elaborate details like that, then he sometimes said that to his staff that they could do that. So, but otherwise, when talking about Tintin, and we're talking about facial expressions, and we're talking about body language, and when we're talking about sort of the basic form and the basic precision and the basic plotting and the basic blocking of the characters, the staging of them and all that, that is of course directed by Hergé. Camera positions and all that. Alright, so I'm not slavishly following the original lines there, because I think it's extremely hard to not, and it's not really giving us any real, of course it gives us practice in inking, but still it's not so satisfying, because we are so far away from the forms of Tintin. It's always very gratifying to work with characters, because characters have life and characters have, so all this surrounding work, which some of you guys may not be appreciating very much, is of course may feel tedious, but on the other hand, it is essential for the story to have it. And that is what sort of, so if you are a proponent of a story, if you really are a complete comic book artist, you must have you must sort of take the trouble of of spending time with balloons, because you have to have text, and I think you have to hand draw them. Of course, not hand draw them, and I don't say that. You can hand draw them on paper if you want. That's what I'm doing, because that's much more satisfying for me. I don't like drawing on the screen or with a tablet like that. I never draw on the screen with a tablet, other than that I'm refining something that I've already done on paper. So I'm not myself a sort of like sitting with this normally, which is why it's actually good for me to do this practice on the screen, because I can always get more screen time. It's always good for me to get more practice here, but still, it's I wouldn't. I think it's more. I get more feeling with a fountain pen and paper than I do with a Wacom board. I mean, here I must zoom in, or and I think the whole thing with stabilizers and all that and is sort of also awkward, because then you're not really painting yourself or drawing yourself, because you're using the computer to minimize your wiggliness, and so I find that sort of unintuitive. Okay, so now I'm going to continue on this line here. And now I know that this line is super good, so I'm not even going to look at the screen to the left. I'm just going to ink this as it is. And I am in, as you can see, I'm in 200%. I may look at the screen, my left screen, when I have removed my blue line here. But I know that my blue line has almost the correct thickness, and and I'm still working in 75% opacity. So I have some softness to the edge when I'm doing this. And also here, when we're talking about the balloon tail, or what is balloon pointer, that I'm, if I were the director of this panel, I wouldn't have done it like this. I wouldn't have done this thunderbolt and lightning kind of style. I would have done it as a simple, just as the third part here. I would just done it like starting here and downwards, although bigger, of course. Because this looks more like it's some kind of coming from a radio, or coming from a TV, or some transmission somewhere, like a broadcasting signal like that. So sort of I get this impression looking at it. So I think it would be better to, and of course that's how I use it myself in my own 987 degrees centigrade. That in the case of like if you hear someone talking over the telephone or over the, let's say that in the spaceship you hear the command, space command saying something, then you could use something like this. If you don't have them on screen, so if you see Barry Riley in the spaceship, and but you have a close-up of Barry in the spaceship, but you and he's on the phone, or he's having his headset, or and then on in that panel you only hear them saying, Barry Riley isn't talking, but the space command is. And in that case, if you would have like a balloon there, you could have like a pointer, a tail, like this, signifying that they are off screen, and that this text or these sentences are coming from another source. Alright, so now that's done, and I think we'll stick with that, and we'll hide the blue below, and then we'll see how this looks, and we will basically I will only adjust the appearance here now a little. So I will zoom in actually now, and I will just fix the width here, because the width is reasonably, the width of the balloon line, balloon frame, the balloon border. So having white on my, so maybe what I should have done in this video was that I should have perhaps said that, okay, so we don't care so much about the balloon itself, and we could just have let it be, or, but then we had some interesting discussion there with different versions, so I think we got something out of it, at least for you guys. And this maybe could be a little softer there. Okay, like a less, and maybe here down here looks a little too, and we are trying to shave it off nicely. So even if this part of this painting isn't perfectly synced, perhaps with Hergé's, it still is handmade. I think that's important to. Let's do the tail also there. So we can see that the tail is blacker, because I was doing these lines like that more Maybe I should have done that all the way around. But the problem is that it's maybe too much. Yeah, maybe working. I'm now at 500, and maybe that would have been a better decision. It's always very important, the whole thing with scale. I mean, and I'm not talking just about the scale when working on a screen, but the scale, even if you're working on paper. I mean, to find the right scale is crucial. And we can see also in the original that this horizontal line is slightly thicker than the line than the panel frame itself. So this would work. And the same goes for this line here on this side here. So we can continue doing the same kind of thing here on that doesn't look so it's this thing. You have to find your size or the scale at which you are working. And this is not only for the of course this is imperative to find the style to or the scale to be able to get the right line thickness. I mean, this is, if just imagine if Alger would have used a pen that was twice as thick or half as thick, what kind of result that would be at that particular scale he was working at. So scale is of course very important for the line thickness or line weight or line, the quality of the line, but it's also important in terms of drawing, because what you can draw at, let's say, 100% scale, maybe you're not so good at 200% scale. So you can draw things like 2 inches high. Let's say you draw a person 2 inches high, but what if you were to draw him 12 inches high, or 2 inches, or like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or so. I mean, if you're changing the scale, you're also changing the parameters of what you're used to. Perhaps you're used to a certain panel height and used to certain dimensions in terms of the height of the characters or the height of the cars or all that. So scale is so you have to find your scale that sort of fits with your production. And if there's anything that you want to exercise or to sort of need more experience in, then you have to sort of do that in that scale, so that you're sort of ready to go when you need when I need to produce the panels. Okay, so I think we have something apart from perhaps the left hand side there, which we can beautify a little more. And we go on white there, and we should be have a rough panel there. And this panel should be also slightly thicker than the panel frame, so we can then the panel frame on its corresponding left there. So we should not hesitate here. And the thing what makes like hand-drawn lines so good is that they are not perfect. They are, that's, but to find that, the sort of exact formula for when they are good enough and not too perfect, it's not an easy thing. So I have this saying that the goal is to find your style. Of course, that's one thing, but another thing is that and one of the items in that sort of process of finding a style is to find that which is perfectly imperfect. So the question then becomes, what is perfectly imperfect? How imperfect should it be to be perfect? To get that organic feel, to get that naturalness, to get that feeling that it's not made on the computer. That's the sort of, that's my objective. Objective is not that it should look like it was done on Photoshop. It should not. It should look like it wasn't made in Photoshop. So no gradients, no shift lines, if I can say, no perfectly straight lines like that. Everything should be manually tweaked, and only then can you get some I say only then can you get some naturalness or sort of softness to it. And that goes especially for if you are, the older you get and the more artistically competent you become, the more I think you will sort of shy away from glossy Walt Disney computer generated panels, and sort of appreciate the more how should I say, not laid back, but there is, it's too all these too bright colors, all these too saturated colors, all these this is in my stylistic universe, at least that's what I'm allergic to. So I want less saturated colors and more natural looking shades and I mean, I don't want shades at all actually in comics, so but if they are to be there, then it's hard to combine them with too much saturation, I think. But that's another totally different topic. Alright, so we are 1 hour and 40 minutes in, and I think we are on our way here, but I still think that there is some wiggliness here up here. That I'm just going to inspect the original panel here to see what they are doing, and there isn't as much wiggliness. Okay, so let's do something along these lines here also, and then we will see. We'll make this just a little straighter, less. Maybe even. I think you have to actually get up in size a little bit if you're doing inking this way. But of course, if you have stabilizers and all that, then things. But as I said, I don't do it that way. So. Okay. Oh, whoops. There is something that has to go straight down out here. Okay, then we have this area here. Let's see how this looks like. Right, we have that there. And still we suffer from up here, so maybe this is the right recipe to work at 300 instead. To see it more as a line, not just a small section, but see the line more clearly. Probably maybe it's just what I'm reacting to is maybe that this is too thin here. So maybe we should do a maneuver like this. Then we'll shave off 50% of it or something in terms of opacity. So which then when we come down to this size will be okay. Okay, so it's not, we can always return if we want before the final, and add some pixel here also. That. And then let's just see if Professor Calculus fits here now into this shape. And then we can ink that next time. So we still have the balloon there, and then we can just remove most of it here, so we're sort of paving the way for the inking next time. We can actually add there also, so we are a little into the head here, but it will cover enough. Good, and Tintin will not come up to this line, so that will be basically it. But what we could do, at least, is that we could adjust the corners so that they actually look like the original. So we could have one round more of that before we still have a couple of minutes before we reach 2 hours, so I think we can just double check here. I'm doing 300% on both here, and then we can just fix that a little there. A little more roundish there, perhaps. Not more roundish, but smaller. The frame goes more like that. More like that, perhaps. And then this comes in more. And has a more bubbly shape than the other one. This is something like that. Bubble. It's bubbling up. Okay, now we take the other one down here. So this is an interesting point for one reason, and it is that in the French edition I have the blue-green background here has come into the balloon here so there is like a almost one line thickness here worth of blue color here along this corner. Let me see if that is true also on the other side. Yeah, no, it's not true on the other side. Aha, okay, so it's not. It's positioned. No, it's not. It's not. It's just in that corner. There's no. It's not leaking, but there is some leaking along this side here of bluish color here coming in, like half line thickness here of colors. So it seems to indicate that the color, at least the cyan portion of the print, that has sort of has slipped a couple of pixels to the left. So, and I see now this also in this next panel that it's leaking over the panel frame, the very same color there. So, okay, so that's just a small thing, but it's fun to see all these details. I mean, in the olden days, in the 60s, when, or even in the later, like 80s, when you were doing offset printing, you had 4 colors: CMYK, cyan, magenta, and the Y is yellow and the K is black. So you have to print the same sheet 4 times, and if one of the colors didn't become printed in the exact same spot, then you get discrepancy of the colors. So anyway, but that's just how it is. Okay, so now let's back to the shape here. Balloon inked. So we're just adjusting the corner here, and that corner could go further down. It's more roundish like that, and then it comes, and I'm still at 300% in both. Then it goes up there and in there. It's more like that, perhaps even more so. There's even more go in there, more like that. And then it's also a little thicker line quality here, so perhaps it could go something like that. It's not perfect, but then again, what is? That's a bad excuse. But all right, and then there's some slope here also there last. Okay, so that's that corner. I'm gonna make it a little more roundish up here, but then let's take the other corner to the left there. Okay, so this is not so bad. So perhaps a little more roundish, little in there, and a little more rounded shape. And then on the inside we have a thicker stroke, but then a little thinner stroke down there. So but still more roundish like that. I think that's better. And it goes down a little more there. Yeah, like that. And then up here, it looks pretty good, except that we want this to be softer. We want this to go a little longer down, and this angle we want to fix a little bit like that. And actually the angle should be a little like that instead. Okay, good, better. And it goes down like that, and thickness wise we should be something like this. Okay, so that, I think that sort of sums it up in terms of so now we can say the panel frame is done and the balloon is done, and now we're just going to ink the characters next time. So before we stop, we're just going to reminder here that 987 degrees centigrade is the volume, and it's Unlimited Danger Season 1. And thank you all for watching, and see you in the next part when we will start with Professor Calculus and ink him. Bye bye. Thank you for watching.